Hello and welcome to Motors for the Masses, and today you find me at DRVN Advanced Engineering just outside Coventry. Why am I here? Well, I've been invited down to see what's involved in the new Mk1 Ford Escort RS. At the moment I'm standing right beside an original Allen Mann Mk1 Racing Escort. But that's not what I'm here for. I'm here to see why this new car is £300,000. So let's go and have a look and see what's involved. So firstly, I was met by Rob Borrett, who was the communications manager, who's been superb in communicating with me, sending me all the B-roll that I was allowed to use for this video, as being the guy I've been communicating with online for all this time to set this up. I met with John Mitchell, who's director of Ford Heritage, Boreham Motorworks. He was director of product planning also. Now he originally started with Ford at the age of 16, worked with AVO as well. He was running the Capri 2.8 project. He was part of setting up Roush in the UK. He's worked on the Fiesta XR2, the Sierra Cosworth, more modern, the ST, the ST220 specifically, the RS 500 Focus and Mount Tune. Now his job here is to oversee all of it. Also present was Wayne Burgess. He's the design director. Now, he was a car designer for 32 years. He worked on the TX1 taxi, worked on Rolls-Royce, Bentley designs, designing cars for the Sultan of Brunei. He worked at Jaguar Land Rover, worked on the X-Type, the Jag XF RS, and was chief designer on the F-Type, the SVR, Project 7 and Project 8, and the Restomod XJ6. He also worked at Aston Martin on the DB9 and the Vantage. Worked with Geely, with Lotus, on the electric vehicles in India for Ola Electric, and was head of vehicle design there before being design director at DRVN. And also here was Amjad Ali, Director of VIP Relations, previously working as Technical Director for Gunther Works Restomod Porsche in California. He came here to work on the Evoluto, the Ferrari 355 Restomod, but also works on the Mk1 Escort project to maintain analog, immersive, modernised performance driving experience whilst retaining the car's classic feel. Now, one of the things I wanted to find out here is what is involved in this process and why is it £300,000? That's one of the big questions I wanted to ask. Now, they did point out that OEM, which is original equipment manufacturer, process takes about 4 years to meet the standards of homologation, not just individual IVAs on each vehicle. So the work involved in getting the vehicle to the standard of production car is actually quite phenomenal. Where the RS200 project will have to meet strict production car-esque regulations, the Ford Escort is not quite so strict, but still strict enough to meet homologation standards. Now, John Mitchell did confirm that there will be only ever 150 units, and they're already overprescribed for sale. They had 300 applications in the first 45 minutes of the launch, which basically means they can pick and choose who has their cars. At the moment, as of now, they've got over 500 applications. Now, DRVN themselves are marketed as a peak brand experience. Always manual cars, never electric cars, and the team is fully car passionate. A petrol head run machine, shall we say. So what do DRVN work with? Well, they have obviously the Ford licensed Boreham Motorworks Mk1 Escort RS and other cars that are coming. The Evoluto project, which is the Ferrari 355 Restomod, but it's a project that you wouldn't believe, and that is something I shall touch on later also. They've got Koenigsegg dealerships in London as well. They are the home of Allen Mann Racing, which was established in 1964, and again I'll touch on that later. ITG, which is Induction Technology Group, and they are developing induction kits for rally cars and things like that, and British touring cars, as well as World Superbikes, British Superbikes and Le Mans Series, and the WRC. They've got Evolution E-Types, which is the modernised version of the Jaguar E-Type. JE Motorworks, which is modernising Land Rovers. So it's quite a massive undertaking that they're doing in total. It's just a huge machine, and the Mk1 Escort project is just one of them. But that's what I'm here for, so let's crack on with that. Now, they did show me a plan, and this Escort is only the beginning. I did ask, is there a Capri? Bearing in mind the monstrosity we have at the moment, is there going to be a Capri in the works? And the answer was, we couldn't possibly comment. So read into that what you will. The main question I wanted to ask is, why is it £300,000? As I said, especially when the likes of the MST are 80,000. Now, admittedly, I haven't seen an MST, and I hope to get over there to do a video on one of those soon. And then they said to me, well, the reason we wanted you here is all the comments on your videos questioning the price. We wanted you to come and see the process, and hopefully by the end of your day, you'll be able to understand why it's that price and report why. By the way, please sign this NDA, which is what I had to do because there's lots of secret stuff going on here. I signed it and I agreed to report my findings without physically filming secret stuff apart from what they are okay being seen. So there's lots of information in here, and there's lots of B-roll that I'm allowed to put in, and there's certain stuff that I've seen and heard but not allowed to report, unfortunately. But there you go, that's the same with all companies. So how does it all get put together? Well, they take an original Mk1 Escort shell and flex it to find all the weak spots. Then they engineer new parts to improve it. It's built to a tolerance of 0.5 millimetre. This process has been 3 years in the making. The cars do have to meet the same crash regs as a production car, so pedestrian impact, front and side impact, and there has to be a 77 millimetre gap between the bonnet and hard impact under it. So when the head hits the bonnet, there has to be 77 millimetres that can go down before the head hits something solid, like an engine. They set me up on a VR system, which was quite interesting, where you basically stand there with a VR headset and you're standing next to the car. You can look round it and you've got hand controls where you can point at things and touch things. And the weird thing is, bearing in mind there's glass there, you can actually bend down and put your head through a closed window, which is a really strange experience. But it's absolutely fantastic to see the inside, the outside, the underneath, all around the car itself. And then they sit you in a seat and you can look inside the car, sitting behind the steering wheel, and look around the cabin. Really, really interesting. Now, the good thing about this is that they can showcase the car around the world, and they use Unreal Engine 5 for the VR session, which is what they use to develop computer games. Inside the car, they use original seating of people to know how to design the seat, and they use extremes, so a very short person with short legs and a tall person with long legs, and they'll find a happy medium that will suit most people. It has drive-by-wire pedals, which means they were able to correct the charming oddities such as the offset steering wheel to make it a better driver experience today. Because what people I think forget is that however charming and great looking the Mk1 was, and sounding of course, and driving for its experience, it definitely needed improving. Using original Ford plans and different sized mannequins, they could help in the design and keep the character, but planning the best viewing position, which is what is seen through the steering wheel, the gear stick placement in correlation to the seating, the pedal reach tolerance and the gear stick reach. They used original Escort scans, and then they designed the new car using those designs to create a new shell. Take into account the flex, rigidity, there's a new floor in there, there's a tunnel reinforcements in there, gearbox tunnel and diff covers, strengthening cross members in the floor as well. And now there's a carbon fibre bonnet and boot. And they make sure there's 3 millimetre gaps all round after paint. You can't say that was on the original car. They look at where the welds go and how they can improve the structure, the rigidity and the quality of the build. And they had to build a computer model to determine stress analysis, applying digital loads using common use material density and applying maths to determine the mass of each tiny section so they can determine the accurate stress results. And they found the digital result correlation to actual results are extremely close. And when checking with the original model, it seems that it was down to the joint issues mostly that let the original car down. And those joint changes made a massive difference on the flex and the stiffness of this new car. They are still using a live rear axle, McPherson struts to keep the originality, but are improving on both of them. And they're applying new supercar tech to it, so ditching rose joints for a Bush ball joint mix to meet the new car standards, all new front suspension, hub carriers, struts. They've all been redesigned for modern use. Oh, let's be honest, the roads in the 70s were probably better than they are now anyway. They use original chassis rails, but they are improved and strengthened. And there's a complete new design of the electrics and the ECU, and they use audio analyzers to determine how music sounds in the car, how it resonates, and how frequencies work in the car cabin. That'll also include what physical noises are made and how they sound in the cabin as well. Things like squeaks and rattles, they want to make sure that they've got all those eliminated, and it's something that improves the car's experience. So the things you want to hear in the cabin, like stereo sounds if you want that, also the actual sound of the engine and the exhaust of the car when you're driving it. And the equipment they use to make the wires and monitor the quality of the wires is about £1 million, making sure they have production car level wiring. It monitors the QC of the wiring and inspects it through microscopes to check that there's no gaps, no water ingress can come in, that there's no moisture getting in, so it doesn't shorten the wiring out. There is an IP67 waterproof 95 pin to 105 pin multi-point single connector, which is lever locked, so again to make sure there's no moisture ingress. I also saw in play the Evoluto project, which uses the original Ferrari 355 shell, and they reinforce it with carbon to increase its rigidity by 23%. I also at this point saw the Alan Mann original racing Escort. Incidentally, they were given 6 cars by Boreham Motorworks, 2 for the UK, 2 for Europe, and 2 others. The original is here, and interestingly, a lot of the parts off this were off the Ford GT40. It had 220 brake horsepower, used a 16-valve 4-cylinder engine. They also invented the bubble arch, as no one else had used them. They developed them for their race car and used them first. So we have thanks to Alan Mann Racing for the bubble arch look. Anyway, back to the Mk1 RS. They used 5 jigs for the development of the chassis and floor. The jigs are all designed by them and built to make the floor, chassis and panels. They are checked to report back to the digital design, so they have the validation builds, shall we say, to ensure all are built correctly. And by the time they get to the 5th build, it should be at the stage where they are happy with how it is built and how it is put together. So the purpose of the previous 4 builds is to report back any errors between physical and digital build process, like I can't get in that gap to weld that bit, I can't get in there to do that nut up, so let's redesign that and go back to physical and see how the physical meets with the digital. It's all very clever and all very interesting, and you can certainly see where all this money comes in. The whole thing is then electro-coated and it's painted before production. They also mentioned that some of the software is £150,000 a year for the licensing fee. The CAD software has had to be produced as they never existed before. It was all physical drawings, so they had to produce the drawings on a digital CAD drawing based on original blueprints for the car, which was a massive feat in itself. Part of the process is that they have crash testing simulation software to see how the car performs under crash conditions. That is all part of the process to see what improvements need to be made. In terms of a drivable car, they are hoping to have the car released by the 3rd quarter of 2025, so around September-ish. September, October, that sort of thing. So it'll be interesting to see when that car comes, and I can't wait to get in one. The RS200 project is in the works, and that should be available next year, but hopefully I'll be back to have a look at that one as well. And of course there's other stuff as well, and I'm keen to see what that other stuff is, because it's all undercover, and unfortunately they've used a generic picture so you can't even tell by the shape what it's going to be. But I wonder what that 3rd heritage one is. And the racing one's interesting, but I'm interested in that 3rd heritage one to see what that is. What do you think it is? Let me know in the comment section below. But for now, the RS200 is just still under wraps, and it's all very hush-hush and a bit secret at the moment, so I can't say anything about it. So there we go, and that brings me to the end of my visit. I hope you've enjoyed that. I certainly have, and it's really given me a fantastic idea as to why this car costs £300,000. The amount of technology and process that's gone into building this car is absolutely phenomenal, and I can't wait until the car is built and I can come back and see what it's like in real life and take it for a drive. So that's all I've got for this episode. Thanks for joining me. I'll be back next time with something else. So until next time, please ride and drive carefully, but have fun. Bye-bye.